This summer I was a camp counselor and now I wish I hadn't been. Being young, bold, and trying to step out of my comfort zone, I decided to accept a job at a summer camp in Hawaii. I spent 3 months out there, and I have to say, being born and raised in a landlocked state like Colorado, it was quite a shock integrating into a habitat that was the polar opposite of what I've been accustomed to my entire life. I just got back a couple days ago. It was a fantastic and life-changing experience, but it's good to be home. One reason being that I have technology again. This camp was in the middle of absolute nowhere, an infernal black hole that sucked all reception and Wi-Fi and decimated it into oblivion. This is relevant because I had some odd occurrences that I wanted to share with the public in order to get explanations and hopefully some closure, but I had no means to do so until now. If you all enjoy this recollection, at the expense of my sanity of course, then I can share more of the eerie mishaps that I ran into this summer. For now, I'll start with the trust exercise. Have you ever been by yourself, closed your eyes, and swore that you weren't alone? This is a sensation that I have grown to abhor. It was the first week here at camp, and I was nervous as hell. I was eager to start this new adventure up until the very first moment I was in Hawaii. The second I stepped off the plane, I saw a cockroach fly onto a man's face, so it was easy to say from that point on, I was a little apprehensive. The friends I made alleviated my fear of the uncharted territory very quickly. We were a ragtag bunch from all over the states, some from other countries as well, and I'm not sure if it was due to our chemistry or the looming fact that we would see each other every single day for the next couple months, but we all got along almost instantaneously. The camp facilities were all built in a clearing of dirt and dead grass, dry and inhospitable for bare feet. There were 6 or 7 weathered buildings that littered around the area in an unorganized fashion, with the dining hall being at the hub of it all, and the cabin quarters scattered around the outskirts. The only redeeming quality of this area was that it was built on the beach, so I was always less than a minute away from the ocean. At first glance, it seemed like the camp was in a perfect area, but after looking around more, I realized it was actually in an intriguing location. While one side of the camp was backed up against the beach, every other side was surrounded by woods. The perimeter around the camp was settled, with thick, gnarling trees with branches like fingers clawing toward the sky. The woods started to invade into the edges of the camp, like frost slowly creeping in from the corners of a window pane, giving this summer camp a gothic prominence, unfortunate for a place that harbors laughter and play. It was about noon, and we just finished lunch when all the camp counselors were led into a thicket of the woods. It had been a couple of days since I got to camp, and I was already pretty good friends with most of the other counselors. Regardless, the camp director deemed it necessary that we still learned more about each other and ourselves by partaking in a couple cliché trust exercises and team-building games, practicing on each other before we taught them to the campers that were starting to come next week. The first exercise we did was the classic blindfold game. For those unfamiliar with this game, everyone is paired up and one partner is blindfolded, while the other partner has to verbally guide them toward a goal. I paired up with this really cute girl named Clara, and I volunteered to be the one blindfolded first. She tied the bandana around my eyes and spun me around for about 20 seconds or so. Once I was completely disoriented and stumbling around, Clara started shouting out directions, giggling with every instruction. All right, turn to your left and take 10 steps forward, turn slightly right and walk forward 6 steps, and watch out for that tree branch. This went on for a couple more minutes before I guess I misheard what she said and walked too far in the wrong direction. While I was walking, something didn't feel right because everything was becoming muffled. With each step, I took the sounds of the other people, the wind, the birds, the crashing waves of the ocean, even the sound of my own footsteps melted away until there was complete and utter silence. That's when I felt it. Even though I could only see blackness, every hair on my body stood on its end. I felt that there was someone standing right in front of me. I knew it. I could sense it, and I could feel their presence only inches away from me. Instinctively, I called out, "Clara? Is that you?" But as I reached out in front of me, I felt nothing. There wasn't anything there. The second I put my hands down, the same sense of dread immediately overcame me. This time, it felt like someone was so close in front of me that they could have leaned in and kissed me. I fell back in a panic and ripped the blindfold off of my eyes, only to be greeted by the scene that I was initially a part of. The warmth of the sunlight cascaded down onto my brow as I saw all of the other camp counselors either aimlessly wandering around blindfolded or shouting and laughing at the helplessness of their partner. The birds clamored to one another, and the ocean conversed through its breaking waves. The person nearest me was Clara, who was 30 feet away. She ran over with a very concerned look stuck to her face. "Hey, are you all right?" "Clara, were you messing with me the entire time?" I sharply retorted. "What do you mean? I was talking to Holly for a couple seconds, and when I looked back, you were on the ground," replied Clara, looking even more puzzled. "When I had the blindfold on, I felt someone standing right in front of me." She changed her look from one that was sympathetic to one that thought I was a little mentally unstable. No one was near you. As you can see, you ended up walking in the complete opposite direction of the goal, even with my precise directions." She giggled again and started to walk back to the group as we were starting the next team building game. She was lying, I knew it. That sense of someone standing in front of me was so real, it was unnerving and put me on edge the rest of the day. This sensation of fear and paranoia invaded my thoughts and emotions and slowly grinded me down. By the end of the day, I was so exhausted that right after dinner, I went back to my cabin and collapsed into bed. As my vision faded and I slowly passed out, one thought came to my mind. I had to try it again. We were given the next day off. The camp director knew we worked our asses off training and preparing for the long weeks of unrelenting work yet to come, so he decided to give us a full day to go out and enjoy ourselves. I was so tired from the previous night that I slept completely through breakfast and woke up just in time for lunch. After I ate, I slipped away to head back to the same part of the woods we were in yesterday. After a few minutes of searching, I found the exact spot I stood in before. It was at the base of a tree that had no branches and stood straighter than the rest. The ground underneath was layered with blankets of damp dirt and rotting leaves. As I stood by the tree, my feet sunk into the decaying foliage, and it began to mold around my shoes as if it was inviting me to stand there for the rest of eternity. Once again, I tied the blindfold around my eyes and proceeded to spin for another 20 seconds or so. Then I waited. It was only a couple of seconds before that same feeling I would come to loathe began to burrow itself under my skin and fester. The paranoia and sinking feeling that someone was standing in front of me paralyzed my nervous system. This feeling came much worse than before, because this time I knew for a fact I was completely alone. I tried to keep the blindfold on for as long as possible, while this trepidation engulfed my entirety. Every little hair on the back of my neck was about to rip itself out of my skin by the follicle as I could feel this person inching closer and closer to me. I kept my hands to my side, seeing how far I could push my threshold of terror. At this point, I was shaking, but I knew if my will was strong, I could manage to endure this sensation for a couple more moments, until I felt a warm breath on the back of my neck. I broke down and started wildly flailing with one hand while trying to take off the blindfold with the other. When I finally managed to get the stupid thing off, I saw what I feared most. Nothing. I saw nothing. There was nobody there, and I was completely alone with the trees that have remained sentinels for centuries. I was panting, still shaking, and covered in a cold sweat. I was in desperate need of a shower, since I was too shaken up to take one yesterday. So I headed back to my cabin and rinsed off in hopes to also clear my mind. Nobody was in the cabin when I stepped into the shower, and I was actually quite relieved. I didn't want anyone to see me post-shock, and I really didn't want to explain myself and my absurdity. Halfway through the shower, I closed my eyes while I rinsed the shampoo out of my hair. That's when I felt it again. I was speared through the gut with this fear that someone was in the room, watching me shower. I opened my eyes, letting the soapy water stream into them and half blind me. Behind the shower curtain, there was a silhouette of a figure. A scream managed to escape my throat, and as it did, I slipped backwards and had what felt like porcelain hit the base of my skull. I woke up with a jerk and bolted upright, scared for my life. My eyes were open, yet all I could see was blackness. Oh fuck, I hit my head so hard I went blind. I was on the verge of tears because of this newfound, life-changing moment when I felt something crinkle up on the bridge of my nose. The blindfold. I slid off the bandana and was drowned in relief. I felt idiotic for jumping to such a childish conclusion, but that moment was short-lived when I finally looked around and recognized where I was. I wasn't in the shower, or even in the cabin. I was lying in a mound of damp dirt and rotting leaves, underneath a tree that had no branches and stood straighter than the rest. I was wearing the same clothes as I was when I first entered the woods earlier, and yet again, I was completely alone. My initial thought was that I did something really stupid, like spin around too fast or too long, and passed out. I was trying to recall walking back to my cabin and taking a shower. It felt very vivid, so I guess I just had a crazy dream. A gentle breeze tumbled through the woods and brought with it a taste of salty air. As the gust of wind caressed and cooled me, I came to a realization that made my heart stop. My hair was still wet. Summer camp story. I just discovered r/NOSLEEP, and I think it's a pretty good place to share this story. I tell this to people anytime we're out in the woods, and they always make me stop telling it because it makes them want to leave. I can't really blame them. So after high school, I went to work at this summer camp up in Backwoods, Ontario. If you're not from Ontario or have never been, just understand that after a certain point, the whole province is just deep woods that basically go on forever. It's all just pine trees and quiet lakes, many of which have no people around for miles. The camp has been running out of my hometown for years. It mostly services kids with behavioral and emotional problems, usually from bad or at least very poor homes. It gives them a good experience for the summer and lets them get away from home for a while. It's super low budget, though, and is basically just a couple of buildings out in the middle of nowhere on our own private lake. So this camp is really old and has a lot of traditions, one of which is a now somewhat infamous ghost story. It's too long to tell here, but essentially what happens is that two brothers who trapped furs in the area 150 years ago fall for the same woman and, after getting into a drunken fight, the jealous brother accidentally decapitates the other with an axe. After hiding the body, he is haunted by the ghost and eventually dies from a heart attack, while the now widowed woman waits in the woods for her dead husband in her wedding dress until mysteriously disappearing, leaving only a bloodied dress behind in a tree. We tell this story near the end of the week and set up a scare for the kids. It's a bit sadistic, but it's all in good fun and the kids get over it. Most come back to volunteer at the camp and help scare the new kids. Now, the day before this story is told, the kids all go out with their counselors and have an overnight sleeping trip in the woods. We obviously save the story for later, since there's no way you'd spend a night in the woods after hearing it. I was the lifeguard at the camp, so I stayed behind at the camp with a couple of others to respond to any health emergencies that happened on the trips. All that usually happens is a kid gets stung by a bee or gets sick and has to spend a night in the infirmary. Nothing really serious, not usually. On the second last week of the summer, the kids all went out on their trip and I stayed back, same as any other week. The four of us who stayed back were sitting in the mess hall playing cards and chatting when a call came in over the radios. It was from one of the campsites on the water. The sites are spread all throughout the area, and this one is across a lake, accessible only by canoe. The counselor says that one of her kids is losing his mind. Getting information over the radios is really hard, since they're just short range and the signal cuts out after a certain distance. From what we could understand, the kid said he met someone in the woods who tried to get him to come with him. He got too scared and ran and told his counselor, and had almost ran away several times while they tried to calm him down. Now I should mention that a lot of these kids can be trouble. They act up for attention and can be a real handful sometimes. But this particular kid was one of the quiet, sweet ones. He was only 9 and just this shy little goofball who, if you paid any attention to, would talk your ear off about his favorite dinosaurs and TV shows. He hadn't given any of us problems all week and was actually starting to make friends at this point. It was really hard for him to be social with other kids. But basically, we take everything with a grain of salt, so a story like this isn't enough to make us call the police, especially since the nearest police station is 40 minutes away. So we talk and decide that maybe this kid should come spend the night back in the main cabin. Kids sleep in there all the time when they're having problems. It's pretty routine. One of the cooks who stayed behind says he'll come with me to get the kid. I had to go. It was part of my job. We start to walk down through the woods to the docks where all of the canoes are tied up. It's a calm night, and nothing is really moving in the woods. The stars are out, and everything is still. The forest in this area can be pretty creepy at night, so I'm glad I have company. When all you have to see is a small flashlight, it can feel like you're surrounded by darkness, and that there's always something moving off to the edges of your vision as the light casts shadows off of every branch and stump. We get to the shore, grab some paddles, and hop in one of the canoes. The water is so calm that it looks like a mirror reflecting back the stars. As we get closer, we can see that there are lights on at the campsite. We make our way across the lake and come up to the shore. All of the counselors are sitting on the shore with their flashlights pointed back into the woods, completely lighting up the trees. The kid is huddled up behind them, sobbing and muttering to himself. We dock and start jokingly trying to figure out what they're all doing, asking if they're expecting someone to come walking out of the trees. They aren't laughing. The younger counselors, who are only 15 themselves, tell us that while they were trying to calm the kid down, he started panicking, shouting that she was coming to take him away and telling them that he knew she was in the trees. The head counselor took me aside and said that they had all seen something walking between the tents, but when they all turned their flashlights on it, they couldn't see anything. She was trying to stay calm and not let on how scared she was, but her pupils were enormous and her hands were shaking a bit. The whole time the cook who came with me has been trying to calm this kid down, who hadn't stopped freaking out since we got there. He had wet his pants at this point, but hadn't seemed to notice. I ask her if she thinks she'll be okay to spend the night, and she assures me that it's probably nothing and that it's just the woods playing tricks on them. I tried to make a case that it was totally possible that there was someone in the woods and that maybe it wasn't safe to stay out, but she was adamant that it was in her head. Plus, waking up all of the kids in the middle of the night, packing up camp and canoeing them all back across the lake just wasn't practical. My boss would have killed us if we did all of that because some 9-year-old had a bad dream. We decide instead that we should take this kid back and let him sleep inside a building so he can relax. Myself, the cook, and this kid climb into the canoe and, after checking one last time to make sure things were okay, set off back across the lake. Once we were out in the middle of the water, the kid seemed to calm down. We tried talking with him, and he seemed to relax a bit. He tells us about the woman he saw. He said that he had woken up because he thought he had heard his mother calling him from out in the woods. He got out of his tent and walked a bit back and said that he saw a woman standing there. He said she was really tall and skinny, and that her hair was messy that covered her face. He said she had antlers like a deer. She had asked him to come help her in the woods, and when he had refused, she got mad. She started to walk towards him, and he got scared and ran and started forcing his way into the counselor tent. We joke that sometimes the woods can make you see stuff, and that maybe it was all a dream. He pushed back against this idea at first, but then said that maybe we were right. He was pretty mature for his age, and I think he was starting to get a bit embarrassed about wetting his pants. He started to downplay the situation a bit. When we were about 40 meters from shore, the cook, who was sitting at the front of the canoe, flips on the flashlight so we can see the dock. The kid immediately loses his mind. He says she's on the shore with her hands outstretched at him. He starts shrieking like I've never heard before. It was like he was being tortured, pure fear and adrenaline. He has no idea what to do and stands up, almost tipping our canoe. He's screaming, go back," at the top of his lungs and trying to walk to the back of the canoe. We stop paddling and I try to calm him down, but it isn't working. He's rocking us really bad and I'm worried we're all about to go overboard. I tell him we'll go back if he sits down, and he does, but doesn't stop pleading for us to make her go away and shouting that she can't have us. We paddle backwards and start heading for the alternate boat launch further down the water. I try to talk to him, but he's beyond himself with fear. I try to talk to the cook, but he isn't responding to me. He's stopped paddling, and I'm struggling to move all of us by myself. Eventually he puts his oar back in the water, but he still won't respond to me. We paddle down, and when we get back to the shore, I have to remind the cook to turn on the flashlight so we don't hit any rocks. He's hesitant, but eventually turns it on. The kid is still scared, but he doesn't see anything, and we dock. The alternate boat launch is further up the road from the camp, so we have about a 10-minute walk along a gravel road to get back to camp. The kid grips my arm as hard as he can, and I basically have to drag him up the road. Now, up until this point, I have been pretty relaxed about everything. It's all been a bit unnerving, but my job is to be the calm and rational one in emergency situations, so I'm making it my responsibility to be a calming presence for the kid. But when we were about halfway back, things changed. The kid stops in his tracks and asks if we hear her. He says she's whispering for him to follow her, and that she wants us too, and he pleads with us not to go with her. I entertain the idea and stop to listen, just to try and reassure him that I don't hear anything. It's late at this point and I'm just humoring him, so I can get back to camp and get some sleep. But I heard something. I can't fully describe it. It was sort of a humming noise, but much softer. It had a cadence like a person speaking, but I couldn't hear any words. It sort of swelled and got quieter. I look at the cook, and he is now visibly afraid. The sound started to get louder and seemed to be coming from all directions. It had a rhythm like breathing, and air seemed to vibrate with it. The kid starts to bolt, and the cook is right behind him. I follow close behind, feeling the noise rising behind me and getting closer. The cook literally picks the kid off his feet and runs with him in his arms because the kid couldn't keep pace. We come up on the camp, and the cook runs straight for the main cabin. He throws the door open and tries to slam it in my face, but I push through, and he closes it behind me. The others hadn't waited up for us, and the cabin was empty. We're all panting, and the kid is now wheezing from crying so much. We coax him into the infirmary, get him a spare set of sheets and a pillow, and let him sleep on the cot in there. He asks us not to go, but we tell him that we'll be right outside the door if he gets scared. The two of us go sit at a table in the mess hall. Neither of us spoke right away. After a minute, the cook looks up at me and tells me he saw something down at the water. I asked him what, and he said it was like a silhouette on the dock. He said it was big and pure black, and the light from the flashlight seemed to pour into it. He asked if I saw it, and I told him I hadn't seen anything. He asked if I had heard it on the road, and I said I had. I told him that all I heard was the humming noise, but he was confused. He said he didn't hear the humming. He had heard a person. He said it was like a distant call at first, but quickly it got so close that he thought it was right next to him. He said it was a voice, but speaking without any tone or rhythm, and that the words were nonsense, like hearing a language you didn't understand. It sounded like a woman. We stayed up the entire night in the mess hall. Neither of us wanted to go outside to walk back to our cabins. We didn't mention it to any of the other staff, except for the counselor from the lake. She said that after we left, nothing weird happened, and that she had mostly forgotten about whatever happened at her campsite last night. The kid begged us to let him go home, but we ended up making him stay. He was a problem the whole rest of the week. He became rude and distant, especially to the other kids. He wouldn't stop talking about what had happened, and we eventually made him stop because he was scaring all of the other campers. He clung to a counselor at all times and never let them out of his sight the rest of the week. I really can't account for what happened that night. I never had anything like that happen after. I even went back for a second summer and nothing similar happened. I know what I heard though. I have no idea what could have made that noise, but it was the most unnatural sound I've ever heard. The kid didn't come back the second summer, and neither did that cook. I saw him a year later while out at the bar, and after some chatting and catching up, I brought up what had happened that night. He got really upset and stormed away and didn't talk to me for the rest of the night. I think he really believes what he saw out there. I don't know what to believe about it. Weird things have been happening at the summer camp I work at. This is my second year working at a boys' summer camp in the mountains. I won't disclose what camp it is for the privacy of campers and staff, and the names I give for people won't be their actual names. The camp is nestled in an absolutely beautiful bowl in the top of some mountains, giving it some natural privacy and the feeling of isolation. That feeling is great when you're trying to give hundreds of kids a fun, transformative summer, but not so much when strange things start happening. I'm pretty sure anyone who's ever worked at a summer camp has heard scary stories passed down by the older campers, meant to freak out the younger kids. My camp is no different. The beaver sharks in the lake that attack children, the skinwalkers that supposedly roam the area, how a few of the overnight camping sites are haunted, etc. I've never really believed in much of it. In fact, last summer went by without me experiencing anything out of the ordinary. This summer has been a bit different. I'll start by giving some of the assorted stories I've heard from other people over the course of my time here. Once I have some more time, I'll spend some time writing up a detailed account of what's happened to me personally this summer. I don't mean to be clickbaity, it's just that my free time here is limited to say the least, and I want to give the tale proper treatment. I'll attach a very rough drawing of the campus to give y'all a better idea of where certain things are taking place. Camp map. Let me know if that isn't legible. I'm not sure how the quality will turn out with how I shared it. 1. A few of the paddling staff had snuck out late one night to mess around in the lower lake. They claimed to have seen a massive snake, 15 feet or so long and thick like nothing we have around here, resting on the bank opposite from the paddling dock before it quickly swam down into the depths when they approached it. It's pretty deep for a man-made lake, and I haven't heard of any other sightings. The sight of a normal water snake swimming through the upper lake when I was having fun at the swim docks the other day reminded me of this story. 2 of my friends were stargazing up at the turf field, a relatively common thing to do to relax after the kids were in bed. They claimed that they saw someone holding a flashlight walk up from the climbing wall area, cross the turf field, and pause shining the light directly at them when it got in between the gym and the grass field. They called out to it a few times because chances are it was someone they knew. The person didn't respond, and after 30 seconds of the light not moving, it pointed it down at its feet and removed its hiking boots before cutting the light and disappearing, leaving them behind. Once my friends were recovered enough from the fright to be curious, they pointed one of their own lights in the direction the person had been standing. No boots, no nothing. 3. One of the tribal leaders, there are 4 tribes in camp, each with about 80 kids, was out at the ball field grabbing something from the lacrosse hut in the far corner. Side note, I don't know if this is common camp practice, but we call the storage buildings for every activity huts. I like it. Anyway, he remembers thinking it was an oddly dark night with the only sound accompanying him being the mind-numbing drone of the cicadas. As he was facing the hut to lock it up, he was overcome with the hair-raising feeling of being watched. He finished and hurried across the field. When he looked back, he saw a pair of red eyes in the woods just beyond the hut. As he was practically jogging across the field, he heard what sounded like something sprinting behind him. He never looked back a second time to see if anything was actually following him. 4. This camp holds father-son weekends on the front and back ends of the normal summer sessions. I've never actually worked one of these, but apparently they're really lax compared to the normal sessions and sound like a lot of fun. Everyone was gathered at morning watch for the daily pre-breakfast announcements. One dad looked across the lake and saw 2 people standing there in broad daylight, dressed in traditional Native American garb. He thought nothing of it, figuring they were part of the camp's well-known but poorly named Indian lore program. When he looked back a few minutes later, they were gone. Nobody else of the 200 or so people gathered there saw them. The grown man swore he saw what he claimed, and one of the camp directors, who's known for being very serious, was supposedly pretty shaken up by his account. 5. A disembodied, slightly decayed foot was found in the swim lanes in the upper lake one morning. Thankfully, it was discovered by a counselor who had planned on swimming for some exercise before the campers woke up. The leadership staff rightfully freaked out about it. Under the guise of an EAP, Emergency Action Plan practice, they gathered everyone in the dining hall and made sure all campers and staff members were accounted for. None were missing any limbs. The directors kept this very hush-hush. 6. A kid woke their counselor up one morning and said that he'd had a nightmare about a shadowy figure watching him in his bunk through one of the screen windows of their cabin. The kid, who was 7 years old, told his counselor with a straight face he'd never be able to sleep again. That occurred on the 4th night of our 2-week session, and the camper would wake up every subsequent night screaming about the same nightmare and then would be unable to fall back asleep. One of his counselors tried to stay up one night, more to give the kids some comfort than to find anything. Although he fell asleep around 5 in the morning, he heard heavy rustling of the leaves right outside his cabin around 3. That was the only night the kids slept peacefully. 7. The cabins of the oldest kids back up to one edge of camp, and it's the bit that has the most dense section of woods behind it. The very backmost, is that a proper term? Cabin, reserved for the counselors in training, had a string of Latinate phrases scrawled in what appeared to be blood on the woods-facing backside of the cabin one morning. The directors replaced the wood siding and burned the written on boards before anyone was able to decipher what the phrases meant. I'm never going to a summer camp again, nor am I ever sending my future kids to a summer camp. Trigger warnings, violence, and brief description of suicide. Last school year we had a new kid, let's call her Tiffany or Tiff for short. She definitely reeked of R&R, rich rents, which made sense because I go to a private school on scholarship. Anywho, we became friends pretty fast. She hated the other kids in our grade, especially because they tried to suck up to her the second she walked into class. Apparently, she was draped in the best designer, some before they were released to the public. Everyone wanted to be her friend, and there were rumors her parents were celebrities or something. Tiff transferred in near the end of the school year, which was odd, and she never explained to me why. I didn't care too much, if I'm being honest. She invited me over for dinner one night, and I was excited because she told me all about her dogs and cats. It was a fun night of cuddles, pets, and the most delicious pizza I have ever had the honor of eating. They make it in their yard on a grill or smoke or whatever. It held all of the finest ingredients and danced in my mouth all the way down to my stuffed belly. Her parents asked her if she was excited for summer camp, and she shrugged, leaning her head on her hand. I thought it'd be cool if I could stay here with Bella for the summer. They looked at each other and sighed. Simultaneously, they perked up and faced us. You could almost see the image of a light bulb hovering above their heads. Why doesn't Bella go with you? Wouldn't that be fun? She sits up straight and asks me, would you want to? Would your mom let you? I look down at my lap and fiddle with my fingers. I don't think we could afford it. I'm sorry. I never was a clingy person, nor did I care about having friends or not, but I suddenly felt a wave of separation anxiety at the thought of not seeing Tiff during the summer. I hoped she wouldn't find a new best friend and forget all about me next year, or worse, transfer schools again. I flinch when her parents laugh together, her mom cradling a glass of wine with her other hand over her chest. Oh, nonsense. If your mom is okay with it, then we wouldn't mind taking care of that for you. I perk up, but sink back down after thinking about it for a moment. My mom would never accept that. She hates when people try to help us with money. Her mom does that thing people do when they are reacting to something they think is sweet and pitiful, making her look like one of those fish with upside-down looking mouths. Tiff's dad speaks up. Well, we do get a discount now that Layla works there. We can talk to her ourselves if you'd like. I turned my head to the side, and Tiff understood my confusion. Layla's my big sister. She's a camp counselor there, but she's totally lame now. We giggle, and her mom rolls her eyes, then playfully backhands her dad on his shoulder when he begins to chuckle too. Well, that settles it. We can talk to your mom when we drop you off later. I was surprised when my mom said yes, but I didn't dare question it either. Camp was supposed to start a week after the school year, but I was packed way before then. When her parents come to pick me up, my mom ran through the long list of things I already triple-checked that I packed. We gave each other a tight, long hug. This is the first time I have ever been away from home for longer than a night, let alone 3 hours away from each other. I'm not one who normally gets nervous, but this is new for me. I'm so used to being able to run to my mom whenever I was in trouble or worried about something. What if I hated camp? I couldn't immediately go back home even if I wanted to. I mean, I know if it was an emergency, she would drop everything and find a way to come and get me. The good thing is, Tiff's parents said they have great cell phone reception, so if I'm feeling homesick, I can call her whenever I want. When we arrived at camp, all of my anxieties fell away. It was beautiful. There were 100 kids of different ages gathered in an organized crowd and a straight line of 12 adults, one being Layla, who was pointed out by Tiff. There were 10 cabins, a mess hall, a lake, and a huge boathouse, all that surround the gorgeous center of the campgrounds. It reminds me of the quads I would see on my college visits, but less artificial. The grass was mowed recently, but was left with a couple of inches which complemented the bushes, trees, and flowers in bloom. There were a few boulders that one could easily climb and sit on with a friend, and there was one in particular that stood out amongst the rest. I don't even know if it qualifies as a boulder, or if you would call it a mini cliff. It was in the shape of an upside-down scalene triangle. It doesn't look naturally shaped that way, but it feels as if it has existed here longer than anything else. When I would inch closer to it, an eerie feeling crawled along my arms and spine, giving me goosebumps. I didn't think too much of it at first, but I always fastened my pace whenever I walked by it. Towards the end of our time at camp, we were getting ready to have a final celebration. There was going to be a performance given by each cabin, some dance numbers, singing, and one cabin even wrote their own little play to perform. I didn't want to leave. Everyone was so nice and fun. We did all sorts of cool things, but I knew I'd be back one day. Hell, this made me want to become being a camp counselor. That was until the day of the performances, the last day at camp. I found out that we would be performing under the creepy boulder as an odd stage of sorts. I thought maybe since the boulder slanted up at an angle it helped block the sun or something. When I asked why, nobody knew. Tiff said it's just what they always have done. The counselors laid out a bunch of picnic blankets for us to sit on, separating us by cabins and organizing it in order of performance. There were 2 rows, and each group would get up, starting from the first set of blankets on the left to the right. The energy was off somehow. I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't enjoy myself through the performances. I faked my applause and smile. My heart rate spiked a bit more after every performance. Ours was the last to go on. Our cabin had been practicing a dance, but I was awfully embarrassed to dance in front of a crowd, so I exaggerated how bad my period cramps were so they wouldn't force me to participate. When our cabin was done, a woman took the stage, and her booming but melodic voice slid into my ears, temporarily drowning out the uneasiness that has grown in the pit of my stomach. At first, I assumed she was a camp counselor, but the longer I looked at her, I couldn't place her at all in my memories. Wow, those were some amazing and creative performances. Let's give it up for each other and ourselves. Now, the moment we all have been waiting for, a tradition we have been maintaining for almost 170 years, the treasure hunt. Everyone around me cheered, and I gave Tiff a confused look, but she just kept staring straight ahead. I gently nudged her with my elbow and she didn't budge. I thought it was weird but brushed it off as her trying not to be rude while the lady was talking, which, in hindsight, was a first. Now you all know the rules and you all know the stakes. All around the campgrounds are 111 hidden bars of gold. You will have to look high and low, sometimes even deep. Whoever takes one will get to bring it home with them, and whoever doesn't, well, let's hope that isn't you. She laughs and everyone joins her, but all of their laughs are the same, and every single one of them is laughing, at the same exact intervals. The monotone choir filling me with apprehension towards this treasure hunt. I nudge Tiff again, and she doesn't budge, just continues to laugh. I wave my hand in front of her face and nothing. I wish I ran as far as I could, but I didn't know then what I know now. All right, campers, on my count, 10 inches. I jump as the choir shouts in unison, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, take it all. Within milliseconds, everyone, including the counselors, collectively shoots up and runs in every single direction. I'm glued to the ground and am frozen in shock at the events that follow. Maybe a dozen kids stay close by and dig into the ground with their arms, eyes expressionless, but the rest of their face is scrunched as they ferociously heave dirt out with occasional grunts. My eyebrows arch in confusion and concern. Some of them are digging so fast they constantly fling dirt in their own face, and yet they remain unfazed, focused. I look back at the stage and the lady is still there, standing in the same exact spot, unbothered. She half-heartedly observes with a neutral expression on her face. I finally gain the strength to stand, and I turn around and see a few kids had climbed on top of the cabins. One of them is jumping up and down, holding what I assumed is one of the gold bars. In what felt like slow motion, I reached my hand forward and yelled, "Watch out," as I am forced to observe only the first act of viciousness of the afternoon. Behind him, a girl shoves her shoulder hard into his back, and he stumbles close to the ledge. The gold bar falls from his hands, and something compels me towards it. Without realizing, I am sprinting in the direction of the cabin and I pick up the bar. Once it's in my hands, time stops for a moment. It's not warm or cool. The texture is like flour, but when I remove one hand, there is no dust, powder, or excess of any kind on my fingers. It's a single solid piece of gold. My worry snaps me out of the time trap when I feel a hard thump echo in the ground below me. I slowly turn and see the boy laying on the ground, groaning in pain. It wasn't a deadly fall, but he definitely broke his ankle. He's laying on his stomach, and his foot has twisted in a 180 motion as the toe of his shoe points at the sky. All of a sudden, I feel it. I feel the collective hunger within me. It's not greed. No, it's like an urgency. I don't want to hold this bar. I need to. The girl jumps off of the roof, rolls on the ground into an upright position and stares through me. I hold the bar like a football in my left arm, and I hold up my right arm in front of me, bending 90 degrees at the elbow horizontally as I slam the side of my forearm into her neck. She gasps and steps to the side, holding where I took her breath. I run without giving her a second thought. I run towards the boulder. There are maybe 20 kids sitting down, scattered amongst the blankets. Once I reach my cabin's blanket, I recognize the familiarity of the current seating arrangement. Everyone is sitting back to where they originally were seated, some of them with dirt stuck to their arms and faces, some with random cuts and developing knots. Out of instinct I didn't have before, I lift up my legs in a half jump and land hard on my ass. It hurts, but the anxiousness has completely disappeared. I look around back to the grass and there are only a few kids still digging, and 2 kids wrestling over a bar. Wait, no. One of them is a counselor. They both end up back on their feet, and in one swift motion, she kicks the kid square in his chest. When he falls backwards, she scoops the bar and sprints back to her cabin's blanket. I glance back to the kid and watch him start to dig another hole until a bar soars through the air, landing in front of him. Unflinchingly, he immediately grabs it and zips over to his cabin's blanket. I look in the direction of which the bar came from, and there are a few kids who have now separated, continuing the search for a gold bar. A sense of calm has taken over my mind and body. I don't even register Tiff sitting back down next to me. She doesn't acknowledge me and faces forwards towards the stage. Kids and counselors zoom in sporadically until almost everyone is back in their seat. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a woman limping towards us. It's Layla. I thought she might have broken her foot, but there is a kid clinging to her leg. She's clutching the bar tight, and every few steps tries to shake him off, but he won't budge. Once she gets close enough that I think she's going to make it, he opens his mouth wide and chomps deeply into the side of her calf. Her blood cloaks his braces, lips, chin, and runs down to her foot. He lets go once she drops the bar out of pain. He snatches it up and races to his spot, not even bothering to wipe the blood off his mouth. The lady on the stage bellows an apology. "I'm sorry, but that was the last gold bar. Congratulations to everyone that has successfully taken one. You should be very proud of yourselves. As for you, Layla, is it? I'm afraid we can't help you. You will be missed." My fear roars back into my stomach. What the fuck is she talking about? Layla collapses onto her knees, sobbing. The lady gives us a final statement. "Alrighty. Well, I'm afraid that's the end of today's festivities. Thank you for sharing some of your lovely summer with us. We hope to see you again next year. Grab your bags from your cabins and make your way towards the parking lot. Your families are waiting for you there. Take care now." Tiff snaps back to life and looks at me smiling. "Did you like it here? I know it's kind of lame and childish, but I had a lot more fun since you came along." My jaw drops and I am too stunned to speak. All I can muster is the smallest of nods. She gives me a confused look with a small smile. She giggles and pulls me into a side hug. "Thank you for making me feel like I am not alone. You're my best friend." My bottom lip becomes dry because I lost all function in my face. I gain enough strength to squeak out, "Uh-huh." She lets go of me and runs to the cabin. I reluctantly follow after her and we walk to the parking lot in silence. When we get there, we see her parents are already there and they're talking to Layla. At once, they hug her tightly and ignore the bleeding on her leg. Her mom opens her eyes, pulls back and grins at us when we walk up. "Hey girls, how was camp?" Before she can reply, Layla walks away like a zombie back to camp. Tiff rolls her eyes and hides a smile. "I guess it was good. Thank you for letting me bring Bella." "Of course. We love Bella. I'm glad you two had a good time." "Hey Bella, did she tell you this is where her father and I met?" "Ugh, Mom, I don't want to hear this again." "What? I just wanted to tell Bella the story. She hadn't heard it yet. Come on now, it's a funny story." Tiff grunts, rolls her eyes and grabs my bag. Her dad then steps forward and grabs our stuff and throws it into the already open trunk. He slams it shut, places his hands on his hips and smiles. He arches his back, reaches one arm over his head towards the opposite side, and then after a few seconds, he repeats with the opposite arm. "All right, my fair ladies, let's get this long road trip moving. Bella, I know your mom misses you a ton. Let's get you back ASAP." Layla walks back by us with a bag towards what I assume is her car. She opens the door and carelessly tosses her bag in. Tiff covers her eyes with her hands. "God, Dad, you're so embarrassing. Let's go." She moves to the car, but I can't take my eyes off of Layla. I can't shake off everything that has just happened. Why the fuck are they all acting so casual? Layla opens the driver's door and slides in. She turns on the car, resting her hands on the wheel, and stares through the window. "Bella, you coming?" After a few seconds, I walk to the opposite side of the car and hop in without saying a word. Her dad turns on the radio and starts singing along to a song he clearly doesn't know the words to, making her mom laugh and clap. He reverses slowly, then gears into drive. He starts to turn, but before he can move forward, Layla's car screeches and cuts in front of us. She swerves to the right, and maybe 100 feet later she crashes into a tree. I can't blink. I can't breathe. I have lost control of my regular bodily functions. The only relief I get is the thought of her parents finally addressing whatever the fuck this is. But to my dismay, they continue to sing along to the radio and drive carefully unperturbed. As we drive by, I stare at Layla's destroyed vehicle. Her head crashed through the front window, colliding with the tree. The glass shards sticking out of her sides, bleeding profusely. She twitches a few times, and I can't take my eyes off of her. I turn and look through the back window and watch her go limp. Her dad turns up the radio even louder. When I got home, I collapsed into my mom's arms crying, and I tried to tell her what happened. She called Tiff's parents, and they said that Tiff was an only child. There is no Layla, and insisted I was sleep-deprived because I was homesick. We looked it up online, and there were no results for the suicide, a car crash at a camp or a treasure hunt tradition at the camp. I know what I saw was real. I know Layla was real. My mom believes me, but didn't believe the story. She was confused when I pointed out the discount her parents said they had, because Layla worked there, and she looked at me concerned. What discount? They told me parents donate money, so there are a few beds dedicated for kids who normally wouldn't be able to attend. Still, doubt creeps into my mind sometimes, but I know what happened. I will never ever go to a summer camp again. Tiff tried to call me a few times, but I didn't pick up. When the school year started, she wasn't there. I still don't know if that's a good or bad thing, and it keeps me up at night even now. I was the sole survivor of a summer camp massacre in the 80s. Tonight I go back there. This is a document of my night tonight. I'm not sure when I'm going to post it. Maybe when I decide to leave. I have a talk-to-text app. I'll keep updating this. Apologies if anything looks weird. I have to whisper. I am standing in front of the office where I first met Gary Swift. It has been years since anyone's been here. The walls are holding up fairly well for how long this place has been abandoned, but the roof has definitely seen better days. Camp Meadowbrook has been opened and closed, refurbished and reopened, and then closed again over and over and over since 1984. Pretty appropriate for a place that the Trenton Inquirer once dubbed Camp Death. Since I was there, they've redone the place. Several cabins have been torn down and rebuilt, or repainted to look completely different. If I remember correctly, the last time they were planning on reopening it, it wasn't going to be a summer camp at all. They had some crackpot plan to turn it into a rehabilitation facility. Thankfully, there weren't any tragedies that led to that plan failing. The management company simply ran out of money and abandoned the project. Thank Christ. That's all a group of addicts need, to be stuck in the middle of the woods, surrounded by the memories of all the kids murdered here. I'm standing by the lake now. This was where I found the first body, little Jimmy McLean, 9 years old. We thought that he had gotten caught under a fallen tree branch when he went out swimming. At the time, we had no idea about Christopher Carter, the man living in the woods. We knew nothing about him, his life up until that point, or the fact that he had been watching us for a whole week. We still don't know what made the man snap. Carter was the kind of person you would call a survivalist nowadays. I don't think we had the term back then. If we did, I didn't know it. He'd lived in those woods for almost a decade, hunting his food and staying away from people. He knew that lake very well and had clearly built up his ability to hold his breath over a long period of time. Jimmy McLean, tall for his age but hopelessly skinny, never stood a chance. I'm standing inside one of the newer buildings. It's a dorm with inbuilt bathroom and shower facilities. We didn't have those in my day. We slept in one cabin and showered in a large facility on the other side of the camp. I'm not sure if that building is still there. I'll have to check it later. I should probably explain what's happening in case people are confused. Camp Meadowbrook is a heavily monitored area. Rangers patrol through here constantly, as do the local police department. Not right now, though. Due to the governor's stay-at-home order, half of the Parks Department has been furloughed, and most of the cops have been assigned to the residential areas of town. There's the occasional patrol, but nothing I can't avoid. I may look like an old broad, but I'm fast on my feet. I've been training for tonight since I was a teenager. I'm in the girls' dorm, not the new one, but the one I was in. This is where I first saw him. Chris Carter. He was wearing camouflage, but I could see him by the movement of his body and from the way the moon glinted off of his black leather mask. I shrieked. My friend Kirsty tried to calm me down, but she didn't believe me when I said I saw a man in a mask walking around. She told me to go to sleep. Kirsty. I try to remember what her face looks like, but the only thing that comes to mind is the sight of her severed head, sitting on the floor of the shower. I remember Kirsty was beautiful, but I can't remember what she looked like. It's funny what age does to you. I'm at the back of the cabin. I just saw a patrol vehicle drive past. I can't tell if it was a cop or a ranger. Too dark to see the markings on the car. They wouldn't help anyway. It took more than 6 police officers to gun Carter down that night. I don't think one little squad car would make a difference. He was pronounced dead that night, after murdering 16 campers, 7 counselors, and hanging Gary Swift from a tree by his own entrails. Poor Gary. He never really liked the outdoors, but running a summer camp was going to be part of a work experience program for his university. He had a bright future ahead of him in organizational studies. Carter snuffed that out, though. That tree was torn down when they decided to reopen almost 6 years later. They knocked down some cabins, cleared out a bunch of the woodland, and built more cabins. Camp Meadowbrook was back in business. Less than a week later, though, he returned. The new counselors and the new campers never saw him coming. Why would they even imagine? Carter was dead. Carter wasn't dead at all. It took a swarm of cops this time, and even then he seemed to be unstoppable. They finally took him down when one desperate officer hit him with his Jeep. The controversy raged for weeks. Christopher Carter had been killed and buried in 1986. How was he back and killing again? Apparently paperwork had been fudged, jobs had been half-assed, and the wrong body had been buried in the wrong grave. Carter had walked out of Ingley Hospital's morgue with no one the wiser. I was living in California when I saw the report on the TV. I switched off my TV set and booked myself into a mental health facility. I didn't leave for 3 years. I'm standing in front of a cabin I've never seen before. I think this may have been one of the additions the 3rd time they tried to reopen the camp. They didn't even get to opening day that time. 2 weeks before the first campers were supposed to show up, one of the cabins was torched. It burned to the ground in the middle of the night. When in the remains the cops found a black leather mask, they assumed it was done by a local, furious about yet another attempt to reopen Camp Death, the source of so much misery and pain. I know better. I've lost so much of my life to this place that I spent less than a month in. The fear, the constant nightmares. Despite the best attempt at trying to live a normal life, I've always been haunted. The faces and the empty dead eyes of those campers watch me from every shadow at night. I see that black, featureless leather mask from around every corner. I can't stand it. I know he's still out there. Somewhere in the woods. These woods. That's why I'm here. We both have some unfinished business. Me or you, Chris? I saw him. I saw him pass by the window just now. He knows I'm here now, and I know he is too. I think I can hear him, dragging that bullet-ridden left foot behind him. I've been waiting for this night my whole life. Planning. Training. I'm a crack shot, and he never uses guns. I'm ready, Christopher. Come and get me. I just came back from summer camp. It's not what you think. I've always been interested in the adventures and aroma of curiosity forests could give me. That's why I signed up for this camp, to receive the roller coaster of emotions as I navigated the journey of camping, meeting people, sitting behind a fire, kayaking, fishing, etc., etc. I think I expected a camp that revolved around sense of community and that brought people together to sing silly songs behind a campfire while the stickiness of our s'mores seeped through our t-shirts. This camp was something different. When I first arrived, the instructor that greeted me gripped my hand with a might. His hands were clammy, and his face was scruffy. "Hello, my name is Kevin. I will be the lead instructor for this summer's camp." Kevin. What a generic name. I nodded as I peered at his face. He stared down at me, his eyes almost appearing crimson. I scuttled away swiftly. When I turned the first corner, I looked back, only to see his grinning face glaring nosily as I hurried away in distress. First encounter was rough, but I quickly moved on. Perhaps he was the only weirdo? Making my way to the dining hall, I spotted 3 scrawny kids playing with what seemed like a lump of leaves. I watched from behind an oak post as the kids dug and kicked at the lump of leaves. One saw me staring and jumped, urging the others to stop. I watched their eyes simply glue to mine as I ran away. Okay, so not the only weirdo. As I entered the dining hall, I held out my application and the 2 instructors on duty ordered me to a small table in the back of the hall. 2 kids sat at the table. One had long curry orange hair, strands dangling over his thick-lensed glasses. The other one had wavy brown hair with freckles splattered randomly across his face. I sat down with them, confidently introducing myself. They just stared up at me, mouths shut, eyes wide. I was puzzled. This camp was seemingly weirdo central. I promptly rested my head in my hands, wondering if I had already made a huge mistake. I glanced over at the stage presented at the front of the hall. Kevin was propped up on the stage, his back lurched forward. "Welcome, fellow cabineers." Cabineers? Was that what they were going to use to refer to us? "I hope you enjoy your stay. You have already been assigned your cabin mates. In fact, they are sitting right in front of you. Make yourselves comfy before we begin activities." The door slammed open. The 3 kids I saw playing with the lump of leaves ambled in. They pushed past all the tables, eyes fixated on mine. I was confused. They sat down at our table in a huff, the tallest and broadest one smirking at the 3 of us. "You," he pointed at the curly-haired boy. "Your name is Frizzy, got it?" Frizzy nodded, his Adam's apple rocking violently as he gulped. "You," he growled, pointing at the wavy-haired boy. "Your name is Milkshake, understood?" Milkshake slowly nodded his head, his eyes turned away from the 3. "And you, your name is Snoop," he snarled at me. The other 2 smiled evilly. I figured where that nickname came from. A bell rung through the hall, and the instructors ordered us off our feet and outside. A tall blonde girl skipped over to the group of us. "I'll be your activity manager today, McKay. Any questions will go to me." She beamed. Her smile was too wide. "Your bags have been dropped off at your cabins. You can return to them later tonight," she stated, leading us through the woods to small waypoint. "Today, we will be doing a bushwalk. This includes hide and seek, bird watching, and everything in between," she began, sitting us down on the small platform that overhung a ledge. For a few hours we strolled through the woods, mapping out different tree species, animals, and plants. This entire time, the group of scrawny kids stared at me. I'm not sure what they were looking for. Changes in my movements, perhaps? Me to screw up? I don't know. She stopped us at another waypoint. "It's hide and seek time. Who volunteers to be in?" Frizzy shot his hand up instantly, his belly button showing from the roof his shorts. The blonde girl nodded, and he stood upon the platform, his hands covering his eyes. "One rule. Stay inside the sector." 1, 2, 3, Frizzy continued. I dashed off, abandoning the others. While walking, I had encountered the perfect place to hide and had noted in my head its location. I diverted off the main path and into a small sector of plain grass that cut into the creek. A rock lay neatly behind a tree, and I scrambled underneath it. I waited. Seconds turned into minutes, and then I remembered. Stay inside the sector. Shit, I thought, picking myself up to head back to the main path. As I gathered myself, a hush of leaves bristled behind me. I swiveled around to see a figure in the all-yellow instructor uniform crouched over something. A pile of leaves, perhaps? Drawing nearer, I realized it was Kevin. He twisted his head, his neck crunching as it snapped out of place to greet me with a wicked grin. My stomach churned. I ran, through gaps in trees and hedges of ivy. I didn't look back, afraid of what might greet me. As I reached the main path, a ball of orange jumped into my view. "Got ya!" Frizzy yelled, grabbing my shoulders with his slimy hands. I nodded, slowly heading back to the platform. As I turned, I saw Kevin appear from the Fort Biden sector. I hid behind the tree. He started talking to Frizzy, and Frizzy was nodding frantically. I watched as he strolled away with Frizzy, their hands locked. I didn't bother saying anything. Arriving at the platform, I realized something. Did Kevin think the person he saw in the forbidden sector was Frizzy? I gulped. When I arrived, everyone else was there, waiting eagerly for the end result. The blonde lady was calling someone. "Uh-huh. Okay, got it. Did I... What?" she mumbled. She turned herself away from us, whispering to her phone. "I don't think so, hold on. You," she pointed at me. "Which way did you come from?" "That direction," I pointed at a random place I hadn't encountered. "Ah, okay. No, he didn't." She ended her call and ordered us the other way. The sun drew close to the horizon, its rays bouncing off the edges of the water like tennis balls. I hurriedly walked behind the group. I thought I was last, but spotted Milkshake in the corner of my sight. He was looking at his feet while he walked, ignoring his surroundings. The blonde girl dropped us off at our cabin. She picked up Frizzy's items and was about to exit. "What happened to the other dude?" one of the scrawny boys asked. I wondered the same thing. "An emergency. He had to rush off. He won't be returning." She left in an instant, leaving a trail of mystery in her path. Milkshake hopped into bed, his items already laid out on the top bunk. The other boys strolled into the bathroom, messing around for what felt like hours. I was in my bed, my sleeping bag set out over the mattress. When night fell, and darkness seeped through the cracks in the walls, the biggest of the scrawny boys grabbed my shoulder. "Hey you, come with us." I was content on staying, but the look on their faces with pleading us pulled me out of bed to head out with them. They took me out into the woods, past other cabins and to the near entrance of the camp, right in the place that I had saw them that morning. A few stones were stashed under a tree, and the boys slowly picked them up. I watched. Then I frowned. It was a head, a severed head of a person I had never seen before. Blood trickled out of its eyes, and the thick blackness of the head's mouth enveloped me in disgust. I didn't move. I couldn't. The boys chuckled. "What, you scared or something?" the biggest one said, bumping my shoulder. Their faces were drowning in the dullness of the night. One of them grabbed me by the hand, and we ambled through the woods. It seemed familiar, almost. Ah, yes, now I remembered. It was where I was hiding. An old shack in the corner beside the creek lay messily. I could only watch as the boys dragged me in there. As soon as the door swung open, a putrid smell wafted up my nose. I covered my face, horror coating my eyes with its demonic mask. It was Frizzy, except it wasn't. His body was gone, bones remained clean and crusty. Any skin, liver, or organs had been removed. His eyes were missing, his hair pulled back. I glanced over at the boys. Their faces dropped. Tears ran down one of their faces. "Hello, Cabineers," a voice rang out from the entrance. "Kevin, it's activity time." I don't exactly remember anything after that. Perhaps a foggy memory and throbbing head? I think I awoke sometime in the early hours of the morning. I recall waking up smothered in a substance which even today I can't recognize. Watch out, Cabineers. He's hiding, he's waiting, and boy is he hungry. I befriended a strange boy at summer camp. I think something horrible happened to him. Did you like camp as a kid? I think most people did, especially parents who got a few weeks of freedom from the screaming maniacs they call their kids. A lot of great memories are made at camp. People make friends for life. They learn new skills, and the lucky few even get their first kiss there. I wasn't the lucky few. My camp experience was a little different than others, and until now I wasn't sure how to talk about it, but let's give it a go, shall we? My name is Cassie Cates, and I'm from Corvallis, Oregon. My mom is Puerto Rican, and my dad is Canadian, and they got together to create the mixed race, mixed nationality bundle of joy. That is me. I wasn't the most popular kid, but it wasn't down to the usually introverted quietness that hinders the friendships of many kids my age. No, for me actually it was the opposite. I was completely out there and weird. I climbed trees, jumped in puddles, and collected all manner of creepy critters in jars so I could have some fun pets. For other girls my age, I guess that was a little intimidating. Plus, nobody wants to be the friend of Bug Girl. But that was okay. I made my own fun, and I never really needed anyone else to make me happy. My parents, however, were worried about my social skills and the effect having no real friends might have on me, so they sent me off to Camp Looney Loggers, a month-long summer camp for kids aged 8 to 16. I went when I was 10, and I never went back. I couldn't. Camp Looney Loggers was exactly like the campsites you saw in all those teenage coming-of-age Disney Channel movies. It was located in the center of a large and beautiful forest. There was a giant lake for water activities, rows and rows of logged cabins to house the groups of kids for the month, and plenty of outdoor play areas to keep us busy between activities with counselors. As for the counselors themselves, they were the usual overly nice and overly attractive young adults, using this as an easy paycheck during their summer break. Of course, there were the senior counselors who were a little older and were in charge of the whole camp. I didn't meet them all, but the two that stood out to me most were Lonnie and Emma. Lonnie was 29 with long, greasy hair and a terrible mustache made up of about 10 hairs. He was really tall and skinny, and he smelled like mayonnaise. Emma was 27 with short black hair and deep blue eyes. She was pretty small in stature but robust in shape. They seemed nice when I first got to the camp, but they did have a chip on their shoulder, having both worked there for 8 years. My parents hoped that camp would squash my loneliness was a lost one. Camp was no different than school, and the kids were as mean and ignorant as ever. I didn't really help my case, swinging from trees while howling like a monkey and rolling down a dirt hill getting mud all over my clothes and curly brown hair. But the worst offense was when I held a spider in my hand and brought it over to show to Janet Cuomo, the cool and pretty girl at camp. She screamed when I opened my hand and slapped it away, knocking the spider out of my palm and onto the grass. Janet and her brain-dead entourage then proceeded to berate me and laugh, as they called me a weirdo, freak, ugly bitch, and some tasteless slurs I won't repeat out of respect for my mother and myself. I didn't usually get upset about things like that, but I had genuinely tried to be kind and friendly, and these bitches decided to insult me for that. I ran away with tears in my eyes, scampering through the open campsite until I got deep into the forest. I probably would have kept running forever like Forrest Gump if it hadn't been for the root of a tree sticking out of the ground and tripping me up. That didn't happen in the movie. I lay face down on the mud for a couple of seconds before being picked up by the collar of my jumper with ease. When I dusted myself off and looked up, I expected to see a counselor, but I didn't. I saw a boy no taller than me, wearing a red t-shirt, denim shorts just above his grazed knees, strapless white Reebok sneakers, a blue cape tied around his neck blustering in the wind, and most bizarrely a gas mask with a hose connection that flowed down and into a box attached to his waist. "Hi, I'm Nathan Jewell, but my superhero name is the Great Nate," Nate proclaimed while doing his best superhero pose with his hands on his hips and his chest jutted out. "I'm Cassie Cates and I don't have a superhero name, but the kids at school call me Bug Girl," I replied while laughing at Nate's ridiculous costume. "Ah, the all-powerful Bug Girl, a friend of all that is six-legged and enemy of Pesticide Man. Your reputation precedes you." Nate replied while shaking my hand with his blue rubber gloves that I hadn't noticed until the strange texture was gripping my hand. Nate seemed like a nice kid, but that wasn't too hard when everyone else at the camp was the spawn of Satan. He explained to me that he was from Portland, but he hadn't been back home in a while. Before I could query him on that, he had already grabbed my hand and dragged me further into the forest to see his new home, which turned out to be a bunch of branches holding up an old, rusty galvanized roof with 3 distinct holes eroded into it. The roof housed a small pallet with a Superman blanket over it. Beside the makeshift bed was a stack of 4 comic books, though I couldn't make out what ones. "This is my secret hideout. The bad guys will never get me here. I'm safe here from their evil ways," Nate said while throwing himself down on the blanket and picking up one of the comics, which turned out to also be of Superman. "This is pretty cool, Nate. Do you spend much time out here? I haven't really seen you around the camp," I asked. "Oh, I don't go to the camp. Too many bad guys there, I can't defeat them all," he quickly responded before dropping his head back behind the comic book. "You should come back with me. We'll have fun, and I'll help you beat the bad guys. The great Nate and Bug Girl side by side kicking ass." I jokingly responded, playing along with his superhero roleplay. However, Nate didn't see it as a joke, closing the comic book, placing it back on top of the stack and standing up. "There are too many. They already got me once, they'll get you too, Bug Girl. You shouldn't go back there, too dangerous. Safety in the trees," Nate responded while scratching at his arm with his gloved hand. "Safety from who?" I asked before being interrupted by multiple counselors shouting my name from the forest entrance. This spooked Nate as he ran off through the trees while proclaiming that the baddies had found him and warning me to beware the leaders. I had considered running after him, but I didn't want to get any more lost than I already was, so I ran towards the shouting. I eventually got found by Counselor Michelle, and she gave me a massive hug before leading me back to the main camp building. I tried to mention Nate to her, but she wouldn't listen, instead deciding to cut over me by rambling about how glad she was that she found me, and that there were some cool plans for the night. The cool plans turned out to be that the evening outdoor activities had been canceled due to an incoming storm, meaning we would instead stay indoors and do arts and crafts, then watch some movies and tell scary stories. I thought back to Nate and worried about him being caught in the rain. "What about Nate?" I asked Counselor Lenora on stage. She seemed bewildered by the comment and asked me who I was talking about when I replied Nathan Jewell. She quickly informed me that nobody at the camp had that name and that I was to cease my silly prank at once. I began to panic about this and wondered if Nate gives me a fake name like a superhero refusing to give up his true identity. I worried that whoever they were was going to get stuck out in that storm and could get hurt. I kicked up a fuss about this, screaming, "Why won't you listen to me? He's in danger, help him." The counselors seemed to have enough of my shenanigans, as Senior Counselor Emma grabbed me by the arm and dragged me out as I continued kicking and screaming. Once we got out of the main hall and into the corridor, she grabbed my other arm tight and basically slammed me into the wall. "Where did you hear that name, huh? Nathan Jewell, where did you hear it? Is this some sort of sick joke?" She asked me, each word leaving her mouth at a speed that could rival Bugs Bunny. I writhed and squirmed, trying to break free, but she held on tight. "Let go of me," I shouted. "Be quiet. I'll let go when you stop this stupid joke and tell me who told you that fucking name." She screamed in my face while gripping both my arms even tighter, leaving visible red grip marks. "I said let go of me, you bitch," I screamed back, before launching a powerful headbutt towards Emma, hitting her right on the nose and dropping her onto her butt. "My daddy taught me that," I boasted. As I ran through the corridor and out of the main entrance, I could hear Emma chasing after me, screaming that she was going to make me pay for that. I didn't stop though, I just ran and ran without looking back until I reached the trees. I kept running as the rain began to fall heavily down upon me. The blistering rain softened the ground and made running in the mud difficult. My curly hair became wet and heavy and flowed down into my eyes. Despite these hindrances, I eventually reached Nate's secret hideout, but he was nowhere to be seen. I shouted out for him, screaming his name and begging for help. Calm down, Cassie, I'm here, he said before stepping out from a group of trees towards me. I instantly ran towards him and hugged him tightly. Oh, Nate, you're okay. I'm so glad. The counselor said there was going to be a storm, and I worried about you. But when I mentioned you to them, they said there was no one in the camp with your name. I started screaming, but they wouldn't listen. Then Counselor Emma started acting really strange towards me, and I thought she was going to hurt me, I explained in a panic. Why wouldn't they listen to me, Nate? What is going on? Why do they think you aren't in the camp? Because I'm not, Cassie, he explained, while fiddling with his gas mask, before slowly taking it off and lifting his head to reveal a kid with gray skin, fully white eyes with large black bags underneath, and a large open wound across his skull, with blood slowly oozing out from the gash. I'm dead. Something is stalking our summer camp staff. I was a summer camp counselor for 4 years. Our camp sits on 2,500 acres of beautiful green forest. Sat in the middle is a lake attached to our dam leading down to the creek. Every year, a staff of about 50 kids aged 15 to roughly 23 will come together to live in the middle of nowhere for 3 months during the summer school break. Our camp has a rich history, celebrating our 70th anniversary in 2018. In the 1500s, the Iroquois-speaking peoples of the Susquehannock tribe, who was known for mining the soapstone in the old quarry, inhabited the area where the camp was built, leaving pottery and ruins behind over the years. On site, we have also found burial mounds. We have 2 camp rangers living on property, settled at opposite ends on the reservation. They live in smaller houses with their families working almost 16 hours a day. They know the property like the back of their hands and do all maintenance of trails, campsites, and infrastructure. Ranger Gary moved on to reservation in 2012 with his family. Having so much property available to explore, he decided to go down the creek on a trail that had been destroyed by a thunderstorm. After hiking about a mile into the forest, he stumbled across a small cave, the inside being covered by white quartz and soapstone. Ranger Gary had decided to take a piece of the crystals home with him, and this is when our troubles started to occur. The night after his hike, Ranger Gary went out for a quick cigarette, eager to get to sleep. As he was heading out his front door, he had realized he left his lighter on a table next to the window that overlooks the front yard. There he saw a figure, roughly 7 feet tall with a thin frame. The creature was ghostly white, almost translucent. With a shirt torso and arms and legs making up most of the creature's stature, it looked anything but human. The creature started to advance toward the house. Ranger Gary, having a young child, went to go grab his airsoft rifle. As Ranger Gary burst out the front door, the creature stopped dead in its pursuit towards the house. From 20 yards away, Ranger Gary finally got a good look. After taking in its grotesque appearance, Ranger Gary fired up a shot toward his metal fire pit, creating a loud metallic bang. Immediately, the creature took off into the forest, running about 100 yards through the grass at an incomprehensible speed. About a week later, Ranger Gary returned to the quartz cave with his wife. But by then, the structure had turned brown and green, looking as if it had been weathered over many years. 3 years later, 2 staff members were doing a midnight tent crew. This is during the end of the summer, when most of the staff is exhausted from the past 2.5 months of nonstop work and want to return home as soon as possible. Taking the red Ford F-350 flatbed down the ridgeline, the boys were picking up tents to take back to our storage building. With a large break in the distance of the campsites they had left to grab tents from, they passed by a large open field. As they were driving along, the back of the truck dipped, suddenly making the noise of a heavy weight being added. With the older boy driving and the younger boy in the passenger seat, the older boy froze. He quickly sped up the truck, now pushing 40 miles per hour. "Put your head down now," the older boy shouted at his junior. Taking a sharp turn, the weight in the back of the truck was lifted and something crashed into the woods nearby. The boys abandoned the task of picking up tents, leaving the ones they had so far in the bed of the truck. The staff site and living quarters is set up in 3 parts: tents for the staff who are under 18, 4 cabins for the over 18 and female staff, and a common area that hold a fire ring, single lamppost, and a large army tent from Vietnam for a common area. As the boys sped into the parking lot, not bothering to shut the truck's doors or even park properly, running into the first cabin where the older boy lived, they locked the doors and windows. The older boy sat the younger boy down, who was now confused and crying in the small living room, and grabbed his sheath knife. That night, neither of them slept due to the scratching and banging on the front door to the cabin. Later, upon asking, the older boy described what had jumped onto the truck, matching Ranger Gary's untold story perfectly. Another 3 years passed with no incident. Then the summer came, and it was spotted by multiple people in staff site, sometimes lurking by the electrical box or even digging around in the fire pit. Eventually, we got so scared that no one was to walk alone at night. 2 staff members even sat up until everyone had gone to bed for at least 2 hours to make sure it didn't appear. We started lighting fires nightly, hoping to scare it away. At the end of the summer, the younger boy from 3 years prior was driving the same truck for our annual midnight tent crew. He left with another boy to drop tents off. As a few other staff and I continued to take down and fold the tents, we heard the screeching of tires and yelling in the distance. 5 minutes later, we were told to drive back to staff site immediately. Having 5 people and only 3 seats in the car, we pied on top of each other after the boy driving said that no one was to walk back. History had repeated itself, and that night, no one slept. Now finally, on to the past year. Again, 3 years since the last incident, and my final year at the summer camp, all hell broke loose. Midway through the summer, a group of 6 of us sat at a picnic table, smoking cigarettes and drinking a beer. No one was drunk yet, and our aquatics director froze. Behind me, the same white figure peeked out of the trees and watched us. No one had noticed except for him. Suddenly, in the middle of his sentence, he let out an angry scream. This had taken us all by surprise, and since he yelled in my direction, I started to tell him off. He told me to shut up and ushered us all inside to explain what happened. Boys from another cabin then started to explain that they had been hearing banging and scratching on the doors and windows. Sometimes it would just be ruckus, and other times they would hear something wailing on the side of their cabin. Sighting began to ramp up again, and as the senior staff, we decided that there would be a curfew of 10 p.m. for all staff under 18. Everyone was to go to their tents, and instead of walking to the shower house, all staff should stay in staff site and use the cabin's bathrooms after that time. No midnight walks, and no wandering into the woods. As medic, I was the only person other than our aquatics director and administration leader allowed to leave staff site unless an emergency arose. Even then, I always took one of my cabin mates with me, just in case. During our final week, the unthinkable happened. I was asleep in my bed located near our cabin's front door. I awoke to the sound of our door opening. A few moments passed by after some noises in our kitchen, and then the door was slammed shut. After the assumption that it was one of the girls coming in from hanging out in another cabin, I checked my phone. It was about 2 a.m., and thankfully I didn't have any medical calls coming over my radio, so I decided to return to sleep. For the second time that night, I awoke to sound around the cabin. This time, it was the sliding of the window above my bed. I looked up slowly, my heart beating out of my chest. What looked back at me was the white, frail creature. It had large, sunken eyes, a flat nose, and thin lips. We stared at each other for what must have been a millisecond, but felt like minutes. In the blink of an eye, it ran back into the woods. I shut the window and slept with every knife I had that night open and ready. The next morning, our kitchen had been ransacked with snacks strewn across the floor and cabinets opened. Furious about the mess, I asked who had come in at such a late time. All of my cabin mates denied staying out and confirmed that everyone had been in by 10 p.m. that night. The only explanation is that whatever this creature was had gotten bolder and came into our home. Remember to listen and look at your surroundings. Don't remove anything from the forest, and be vigilant working at my old summer camp.